Raves and Germs, welcome to N.Jay today. You're watching this either on our official YouTube channel or on mishmashers.com. My name's McConnaughay, and this is the second edition of Horror Tuesdays. Now, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Shudder streaming service, but it's a streaming service primarily centered around horror films and television of that ilk. It's operated by the AMC television network and first premiered in late 2016. At the time of its arrival, I frequented the service for a brief period before making the decision to go ahead and let my subscription expire. I'm big into horror films, but at the time, I didn't feel as though it had enough titles I hadn't seen or hadn't already owned myself. However, now fast forwarding a few years, I have decided to go ahead and revisit the service, now that it has some exclusives under its belt, and see how it stands up and whether it is something I would recommend to horror fans that are potentially on the fence about it. The first film I decided to look at amongst the list is a film called Always Shine, directed by Sofia Takal. The film arrived on the service on March 7th, 2017, and received a positive response from critics, although I think that it's the type of film that not a whole lot of moviegoers have seen, and therefore it's difficult to really proclaim a critical consensus on its quality one way or the other. But that's what I hope to accomplish doing in this video, whether it be to recommend Always Shine to you, or to suggest that it isn't worth your time. Always Shine is an American psychological thriller film starring Mackenzie Davis and Caitlin Fitzgerald. I have seen both these actresses around, although I would only regard myself as vaguely familiar. Caitlin Fitzgerald is arguably most known for her portrayal in a main role of Masters of Sex. Meanwhile, Mackenzie Davis has appeared in films like The Martian and, more recently, Blade Runner 2049. The film focuses on two actresses, as in, they portray actresses in the film. One named Beth, who is starting to break through into commercial success, being cast in thrillers and beer commercials, the kicker being that most of these roles oftentimes require nudity. Meanwhile, her friend Anna is on another side of the spectrum entirely. She hasn't really got her foot in the door, and often works for free in student films, hoping to gain some, momentum. I'll leave the summarization alone by saying that it focuses on the jealousy between the two, as they rendezvous for a weekend getaway, and thereafter, it establishes why it is a psychological thriller. I will also further emphasize the fact that this is a psychological thriller and not necessarily your traditional conventional horror film. I would describe the performances of the two lead actresses as the best aspect by far of this film, and for the most part, Always Shine is built around who they are, how they perceive situations from their perspective, and their relationship with each other. Whereas Caitlin Fitzgerald comes off as timid and almost fragile, although the film suggests an added layer to that as well, Mackenzie Davis's character comes off as more frustrated and irritable, herself feeling victimized for craving her friend's success, whereas from the early going, it's established that the misogyny which plagues the industry has taken the shine off from a lot of the projects her successful friend is involved in. In some respects, Always Shine reminds me, albeit in a very vague way, of Antichrist, a film directed by Lars von Trier about a couple dealing with grief in regards to the loss of their son. The reason I mention this film is because when I think the aspects I enjoyed about it, I feel more inclined to say I enjoyed aspects in which they are dealing with their grief more than the aspects that earned it the title of Antichrist. And I think that's a fault that Always Shine suffers from as well. This film is simple, and at the heart of the film, it's about two characters, Beth and Anna, and their friendship and the strain on it. And those aspects, while they certainly aren't anything we haven't seen prior to this film, I was able to become invested because of the effort involved. However, I can't help but feel as though the conclusion comes together as an unsatisfying and unnecessary resolution. In some respects, I almost wonder if Always Shine would have been better if they would have further expanded on the relationship between the two protagonists, and then follow down that rabbit hole for a drama, instead of what felt like something more clumsily rushed together by the end. In other words, I think it'd have been better if the horror elements weren't featured, which is a pretty big complaint. In the end, while I do stand by what I think, that the aspects of the film that establish it as a genre film are the aspects I am least interested in, I did enjoy the performances of those involved, and think that even with its simple premise and execution, it held my attention because of these reasons. While I don't feel this film is a real feather in Shudder's cap as far as exclusives are concerned, I do think it's a decent addition to their catalog. Thanks for joining me on this edition of Horror Tuesdays, and if you've seen this film, feel free to let me know what you think. My name's McConnaughay from mishmashers.com, and I'll see you next time.